What should we do when our kids are sad? Or even more, what do we do when they're faking it and we know it, but they're just faking being sad for attention? Today in the Celebrate Kids podcast, in this daily segment, Facing the Dark, we're going to look at this issue. It's a new social trend, and Dr. Kathy has some important insights on whether or not we should push our kids always toward happiness. But before we do that, I want to let you know that this episode is brought to you again by our friends at Summit Ministries. They're doing incredible work. Dr. Kathy just wrapped up a couple-day teaching over there. And what happened inside of Summit is really unique and dynamic. Not only do the kids get to hear from really renowned people who have been spending years speaking to different groups, adults and kids alike, people like John Stonestreet, Dr. Kathy is another one, and they give kids insights into what's happening in the world. But even more than that, they spend time mentoring them, talking to them, rubbing shoulders with them, getting to know them, having some time where they can ask some of their deepest, maybe biggest fears that maybe they haven't felt comfortable asking anyone before, but they get to ask it to someone who is learned, who's really spent their most of their life studying these topics. It's really important for kids to have an experience like this where they know that there are answers inside of Jesus Christ, and there is hope that's given by his name and through his death and resurrection over the grave. I would encourage you to go check it out. Go to summitministries.org/celebrate kids. If you want to register, there's a couple of camps yet this summer that are open, especially towards the end of the year. You can use the code CELEBRATE24 to get a special discount. Now let's turn to Dr. Kathy Cook.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
So, Dr. Kathy, the term sad fishing is one that researchers have recently defined in the Journal of American College Health. It was from 2021 that I read this concept, and it refers to when social media users exaggerate their emotional state online to generate sympathy. It could be in the form of like a sad photo or kind of an ominous quote or really a vague post. In a recent 2023 study that was published in the Journal of BMC Psychology, they found that teens who participated in this sad fishing exhibited also signs of anxiety and depression, with really low social support as kind of a contributing factor to why they were fishing for other people to respond or engage their, perceived sadness or presented sadness. Researchers also found that boys reported having higher sad fishing tendencies than girls at the age of 12. But the trend decreased as boys got older, and it kind of subsequently shifted to girls, where the trend increases as they get older. Adolescent sad fishing on social media has really been linked to a lot of anxiety and depression, attention seeking, and has really kind of been perceived as those around these kids are not offering social support. So they turn to social media to pretend they're sad. There are many influencers who've used sad fishing. And there's a prominent one right now where Kendall Jenner talked about a debilitating struggle with acne and got her followers really to be sad for her and sympathize with her. And then later it was unearthed that she did all of this to advertise for a new skincare product that she's working with. When our kids are sad or present themselves as sad, Dr. Kathy, I'd like to have you kind of explain to this. What should be our response? Because sad fishing is now actually a thing where kids do or act as if they're sad when they might not be sad, but they know they're going to get maybe a response they're looking for. Do we just need to kind of step into this and maybe, do the dad-splaining thing that I've talked about before, where we just kind of say, hey, you're sad, that's a bummer, I don't know, rub some dirt on it. Do you want to be sad or do you want to be happy? And kind of move these kids along in their life so that they don't just sad fish for other people that sympathize or empathize with them.
This is fascinating. Great topic today. I remember a number of years ago already where I challenged our teenagers to be honest. And I remember getting, like somebody would quote a song lyric. I had many social media friends. They would quote a song lyric or they would quote a stanza like from even a poem. And I'm like, okay, what are you asking here? What are you telling us here? And, tell us the truth. So this has been around a long time. And I think that paying attention is really cool. First of all, I want to address something you didn't even ask me. And that is this Kendall Jenner situation where she called acne a debilitating struggle. I'm sorry. Acne is acne and it can be really bad. and it can create bullying, and it can cause kids to have real concerns about who they are. Like, I respect that. But debilitating struggles are my parents are divorcing. Debilitating struggles are my grandmother's on hospice. Debilitating struggles is, something much more significant, even things like I got cut from a soccer team and I don't know who I am now. So first of all, if I were a parent and I knew that my kid had followed her and she called acne that, I would challenge that language and I would ask kids what they think of a star like that calling that a debilitating struggle. And then the manipulation there, like that's a whole episode. How no, that really makes me mad. So back to your questions, um, I want us to observe, I want us to know our kids so well that when they say they're sad, we know if they're telling the truth or not. Like, I want us to be so present in their lives and so available to them and their struggles with friends and their struggles with loneliness and their struggles with getting cut from a team or not playing enough in a game or a piano teacher who pointed out only the negatives. I want us to know what's going on so that if a son or daughter calls into our lap and says, "Hey, Daddy, I'm just so sad," you have an idea that there might be some truth to that so that you wait longer to see if she'll elaborate or that you would know what you might want to say to get her to talk more about whether or not there's some truth here. I do think there's a place for saying, are you happy to be sad? Are you asking for help? One of the things I like to say to parents is, are you telling me something or are you asking for help? Do you need to get it out of your head? You just want to be seen in your moment? Like, I get that. We can all have moments of sadness and a wave that comes over us. So maybe a good way for us to respond would be, are you asking for help or are you just telling me what's going on? But what if we knew our kids so well that we would know whether or not they were, they were sad? What's it called? Sad fishing. And I would challenge, like, if I had a good relationship with kids who were old enough, and some kids came to me and said, "Man, I'm just so sad." I think I'd be tempted to say, "I'm surprised to hear that based on what I've seen in you." Like, so explain that to me. Like, I haven't seen you sad. I've seen you eager. I've seen you, get out of bed quickly. I've seen you, respond quickly to the text from your grandmother. I've seen you help your mom in the kitchen. I've seen you play cards with your younger brother. So help me understand what you mean by that. I think we challenge them. Are you telling the truth? And what do you mean by that?
I love that, Dr. Kathy. I just love the idea of really engaging kids and knowing them so well to speak into that reality. I did want to ask you too, there seems to be a pretty strong developmental shift in this, specifically with young boys, where the research shows that up until the age of 12, they might, resort to sad fishing, but then it really decreases at the age of 12. But for girls, it kind of then picks up from the age of 12 and increases as they get older. Why do you think that there's such a developmental and maybe even, sex oriented kind of split here between men and women in how they respond to this?
I'm not too sure. I did find that interesting as well. We believe here at Celebrate Kids that technology can cause children of all ages to believe they can be happy all the time. The more that you would use a social media app, the more likely you would believe the lie that happiness is my right. I can like posts and I can get my posts liked. I can X out of games I might lose. I can ignore people I don't like. I don't have to answer the phone. I can listen to only the music I want. So I create this little bubble world that's perfect for me. So I wonder if, as girls get older and they participate more on social media, that increases their need for happiness and their awareness when they don't have happiness because they're only looking at social media to get their happiness from. And that is such a dangerous position for any of us to be in because it's not going to be effective. So that's the first thing I thought of. I do think that's fascinating. I want to think more about that.
Yeah, Dr. Kathy, I do agree with that. And I think it's interesting that you bring up that concept of happiness. We've been talking to a lot of different schools and school administrators and talking through different programs that we're going to be, engaging with them this fall with professional development with their staff and even connecting with their parents. There was one administrator who recently told us that he really feels like parents are just kind of there to get their kids to be happy. So all decisions end up being about their kids' happiness. Their sports decisions end up being to drive their kids towards happiness. Their schools decisions end up driving their kids towards happiness. I would even go as far as to say, when we look at faith formation, we can tend to want to make decisions on how to build faith or whether our kids should go to a youth group or be a part of a Bible study or all of these things around happiness. When we parent, should happiness really be a target or kind of that goal, to avoid sadness? The idea is that if our kids are sad, they might have anxiety, which then might lead to depression and then might lead to really bad things. And so happiness seems like a natural goal inside of culture. What should we be doing to guide our kids in this cultural moment, knowing that really sadness and happiness are kind of pitted side by side, and we have to make a decision to choose one or the other right now.
I remember in more than one recent book you and I have read, Jonathan Haidt wrote in Anxious Generation that if you strive for happiness, you'll actually find the exact opposite. And that's what I found in my work with technology, people who strive for happiness. So happiness is happenings. It is circumstantial. We are not in control. So we can't make it happen. We don't control our dad or our teacher or our coach or the weather. And so, or in my case of having a recent accident, if my goal was happiness, or I believe that, if I wasn't happy, I would be, a terribly broken person, I wouldn't be on the podcast recording today. I would have crawled under a rock like, well, woe is me. I fell and look at my arm. No, it can't be about that. And the earlier that we help people understand that you're not in control, and happiness is happiness is circumstantial. Happiness is not the goal. For believers, it's got to be joy. For believers, it has to be a deeper emotional relationship with a real Jesus Christ. And then what we get from, relationships with parents, et cetera. So this administrator has parents who think my kid will be happy if she gets this teacher. My kid will be happy if she makes the team. We have to push back and say to the parents, can you help your kids process unhappiness? Can you help your kids process loss? Can you learn to help your kids process grief? And then we say to these parents, it is not about you. Like one of the things you and I talk a lot about off mic is the danger that parents think that everything their kids do is a reflection on everything the parents have done. And that's not true.
I love what Dr. Kathy said today, and it reminded me of a passage that comes out of Philippians chapter 2. I'll begin reading at verse 1. Therefore, if any of you have encouragement from being united with Christ, if there's any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but rather in humility value others above yourselves. Paul does some incredible things here, and he talks about really his joy being complete by being like-minded. This trend of sadness is really selfish. It really draws attention only to us. But what Paul talks about here and in other parts of Scripture, he really encourages the church to be unified, to seek unity. One of the ways that he encourages us to do that is by apologizing, by confessing sin, by seeking each other out. In other parts of Scripture, he talks about how that brings him incredible joy. And I wonder if for us as believers, if that's something we need to do with our kids, to seek connection with them by maybe apologizing for the way that we've maybe made things about us lately. It might be something that would be hard for us to do, but as Paul talks about here, it gives incredible joy, not only to those who are also believers, but especially to your kids. So maybe take some time, look at that, consider that today. Is that something you need to do to encourage unity with your children? Well, I want to thank you for listening to this episode of the Celebrate Kids podcast, the daily segment Facing the Dark. On behalf of Dr. Kathy Cook, my name's Wayne Stender, and before I go, I want to remind you that this episode is brought to you by Summit Ministries. Check out their work, summit.org/celebrate kids. Thanks for listening to the podcast today, and we're looking forward to seeing you here again tomorrow.